let's finish them off. Zhang Yi was never stingy with the people around him, especially those who could help him. So this time, he gave Gao Tianwu and the others sufficient weapons and equipment. Not just ordinary weapons and ammunition. There were also flamethrowers specifically designed to deal with swarms of cockroaches, as well as special grenades that could cause large-scale damage. The young people of the school of Wu were fearless and rushed forward with their weapons, fighting the mutant cockroaches. Frog sighed, frogs don't like fighting, but these big bugs look delicious. I'll stock up on food and wait for spring. Rib bit. After a fierce battle, Gao Tianwu and his brothers finally killed all the mutant cockroaches. However, they paid a heavy price for this. Gao Tianwu was covered in blood, with more than a dozen cuts from the cockroaches, and even a piece of flesh torn from his shoulder. Xiao Guang was beaten out of his Autobot state and lay on the snow, his lips purple from the cold. Fortunately, the frog protected them from being eaten by the cockroaches. On the other hand, the frog was unharmed. Though the giant cockroaches looked terrifying, in the frog's eyes, they were just large insects. The insect master, having lost the giant cockroaches he had painstakingly raised, knew deep down that he would not survive the day. A creepy smile appeared on his face. It seems that my plan has failed this time. Master, I have failed you. He raised the sword in his hand and stabbed it fiercely into his chest. At that moment, a bullet pierced his withered wrist, preventing him from delivering the final blow to feed the cockroaches with his own flesh. Out of nowhere, Zhang Yi walked out expressionless, followed by Zhou Qi and Yang Xinxin. Yang Xinxin was holding Flower, who was fast asleep, in her arms. Zhang Yi. The insect master was shocked. Although he had been talking big, when he actually saw Zhang Yi, he was nothing. Yang Xinxin stroked Flower's fur, and behind her, a six-winged angel slowly appeared, with 3 pairs of wings in 3 different colors. Red represented love and desire, black represented hatred, blue represented judgment. The angel of desire drew her bow, took a red feather, and shot it into the insect master's chest. In an instant, his eyes, which had been filled with the desire to die, completely changed. He became as docile as a sheep, staring at Yang Xinxin with adoration. Zhang Yi told Zhou Qi to go and treat the injuries of the school of Wu first. He had actually seen everything that happened here today. After all, Zhu Xing had already given him control of Tianhai City's satellites. Any movement on the ground here was within Yang Xinxin's grasp. Zhang Yi had been watching since the battle began. He didn't rush to intervene, but wanted to see if Gao Tianwu and the others were worth cultivating. The facts proved that they were indeed young, ruthless, and determined. For Tianhai City, which was currently suffering from a shortage of talent, they were indeed a breath of fresh air. Flower jumped over and pressed his claw directly on the Bugmaster's head. Boom! His body was pressed directly into the snow. Yang Xinxin and Zhang Yi walked up to him, and Yang Xinxin asked, "Who are you? Why are you causing trouble in Tianhai City?" The insect master did not hesitate to reveal the truth. To love someone, one must devote oneself without reservation. My name is Rakhad, and I am a bug master. My master ordered me to come here and cause trouble for Zhang Yi. Yang Xinxin and Zhang Yi exchanged glances. Master? It seemed that this bug master was just a small minion. Behind him was the real mastermind. Who is your master? Yang Xinxin asked. The bug master slowly said a name. When Zhang Yi heard this name, his eyes were filled with shock. It's him? This name was not unfamiliar to Zhang Yi, but he never imagined that this person was still alive and would come to Tianhai City to take revenge on him. Zhang Yi frowned, puzzled. He couldn't figure out why this person would return. How dare he oppose him? Take him back and interrogate him thoroughly. Get every bit of useful information out of him. Zhang Yi said indifferently. Flower instantly grew larger and picked up the insect master with a slight look of disgust. This guy's smell was nauseating. Zhang Yi turned around to see Gao Tianwu and the others. They were seriously injured and would die quickly in this weather without immediate medical treatment. However, when they saw Zhang Yi, they still held on, waiting for him to come over and say something to them. Zhang Yi looked at this group of young people with determined eyes and nodded. You did well this time. I will have you treated and give you a generous reward. Gao Tianwu shook his head. We don't want a reward. Zhang Yi raised his eyebrows, smiling faintly. You don't want a reward? That means you think what I gave you isn't enough? If a person says he doesn't want anything, it's definitely because he wants more. Gao Tianwu didn't deny it and said very frankly, Mr. Zhang, my brothers and I want to follow you. Zhang Yi snorted. Follow me? You guys? Yes, us. Zhang Yi took a deep breath. Your abilities are still too poor, so following me won't do you any good. But considering how hard you worked, I can arrange a place for you to stay. As for the future, it depends on your performance. Although Zhang Yi didn't say it explicitly, the meaning behind his words was that he was willing to let Gao Tianwu and the others follow him. However, the implication was that whether they could advance further in the future and obtain higher positions in Tianhai City would depend on their subsequent performance. Gao Tianwu and his brothers were filled with excitement. Yes, thank you, boss. Zhang Yi waved his hand. Don't call me boss, just call me Mr. Zhang from now on. The title boss sounds like someone who's involved in the underworld. I'm an educated man who studied the spring and autumn annals. In any case, Zhang Yi's agreement to take them in was a good thing for Gao Tianwu and the others. Zhang Yi planned to assign them to Chaoyu Base. After all, it was located on the coast and was now Tianhai City's most important defense base, but it was also the weakest of the three bases. However, Zhang Yi was clearly more interested in the frog. He had observed the battle from start to finish, and although the frog was obviously very strong, he always gave off the impression of being lazy. Rib bit. Now that everything has been settled here, I plan to go back. Gao Tianwu, feel free to come find me if you have time in the future. The frog patted his snow-white belly and said with a grin. Gao Tianwu was taken aback. You still plan to go back? Isn't it good to stay in the big city? We can make a fortune together. The frog shook his head. No, no, no. Compared to this, I prefer rolling around in the pond. The fish, shrimp, and eels in the pond are all frozen, which saves me the trouble of finding food. Rib bit, rib bit. He always looked very happy, jumping around and looking extremely cute. Zhang Yi smiled and said, the pond you live in is too small. There's a heron river in front of my house. Why don't you go there? There are lots of fish there, and of course, loaches too. The frog scratched his head. He was an easily satisfied frog, so a small pond was enough for him. But who could resist the temptation of an entire river? After thinking about it for a while, and with Zhang Yi's strong invitation, he nodded and agreed to go back with Zhang Yi. Zhang Yi intended to keep this insect-catching expert around so that if any pests or diseases struck Tianhai City in the future, it would be easier to deal with. What's more, he thought the frog had great potential and a lot of room for growth in the future. After some discussion, Zhang Yi took them back to his refuge. This was the first time Gao Tianwu and the others had been to Zhang Yi's shelter. Nowadays, this place was one of the most luxurious residences in the entire Huaxu Kingdom. Even Zhu Zheng, the supreme commander of the Jiangnan region, didn't have a house in Blizzard City that was of this standard. It was a huge and magnificent villa with heating that kept it warm all year round. When they stepped through the heavy alloy doors, Gao Tianwu, his brothers, and the frog were all dumbfounded. The sudden warmth that swept over their entire bodies, even a feeling of heat, was too unfamiliar to them. Zhang Yi prepared a change of clothes for them, but asked them to change into hospital gowns first and receive treatment from Zhokir. After all, fighting those dirty cockroaches, they had inevitably been infected with many kinds of terrible viruses. But for Zhokir, these were just minor problems. With sufficient medicine, her abilities as a doctor, and her rich medical experience, they were quickly bandaged and injected with medicine. This comfortable environment strengthened Gao Tianwu and the others' determination to follow Zhang Yi. Zhang Yi could see what they were thinking. He said to them, I currently have 3 bases under my command. Although the conditions there are not as good as here, they are still suitable for survival. I will send you to one of the bases. You will have to rely on your own hands to fight for a higher position. It's the end of the world now. There aren't many complicated relationships. Even if you're not related to anyone or don't have children, as long as you're capable enough, you can climb your way up. A good life, fame, status, women, all of this is within your grasp as long as you're strong enough. Zhang Yi's words stirred the hearts of the group. These were things they had never dared to dream of in their small village. I'm giving you this opportunity. Now it's up to you to make the most of it. Zhang Yi still gave them some supplies, but not too much. It wasn't because he was stingy, but because if these people took too many things with them to Qiaoyu base, they would easily attract attention as newcomers. Anyway, once they arrived at Qiaoyu base, they would have food and clothing for the rest of their lives, so this opportunity was more valuable than any amount of supplies. While Zhang Yi and Gao Tianwu were chatting, the frog was playing with Flower and Totoro at home. This frog seemed to have a natural affinity for people. In short, it was very sociable and got along well with everyone. Flower was lazily sleeping in the cat bed in front of the fireplace, and the frog could easily chat away for half a day. However, when he learned that Totoro could play the flute, his big eyes suddenly lit up. Wow! Are you also a human mutant? Totoro looked blank, clearly unable to understand the frog's words. After Zhang Yi picked him up, Zhou Qi and the others studied Totoro for a long time, but they still couldn't figure out what species he was. Unable to determine this, they couldn't even develop an animal translation device. However, no one was in a hurry. Totoro had a very gentle personality and, although he had a high ability index, he didn't seem to be good at fighting. Keeping him at home as a pet would also enrich the atmosphere of the shelter. The frog surrounded Totoro, looking left and right. Suddenly, he pulled a vertical flute from under the folds of his belly and began to play. Totoro listened silently, and soon, as if they were of one mind, he took out his beloved flute, and placed it to his mouth to play along. The duet attracted the attention of everyone in the shelter, who came to the living room to see what was going on. The frog raised his flute and danced on the floor, while Totoro sat quietly with his eyes closed and played. It was an exceptionally harmonious scene. Zhang Yi pursed his lips and nodded. I didn't expect there to be a musician in my family. That wasn't entirely accurate, because Yang Xinxin, Zhou Qi, Yang Xia, and Zhou Haimei all knew how to play musical instruments. However, when it came to singing, they were a little lacking. Yang Xia did have a signature song, but without a tuner, it was completely unlistenable. When the song was over, the frog's eyes were filled with excitement. Ribbit, you played so well. Totoro opened his mouth and made a sound like a baby deer. Yang Xinxin walked over to Zhang Yi and said, Totoro can play music, so he might also be a mutant human. Let him spend some time with this big frog, maybe it will trigger his memory. Zhang Yi nodded, that makes sense. Even if it doesn't work, it's still nice to listen to them play. Now we have a small band. Yang Xinxin giggled, and it's an animal band. Zhang Yi asked Gao Tianwu and the others to stay behind, set up another round table in the room, and they all enjoyed a delicious meal together. In the afternoon, Zhang Yi asked Lu Dehai to send a car to take Gao Tianwu and the others to the Qiaoyu base. He gave Lu Dehai a few words of advice, telling him that these were talented people and to make good use of their abilities. Lu Dehai himself had been promoted by Zhang Yi, so when Zhang Yi spoke, he naturally agreed wholeheartedly. By the way, have there been any unusual movements along the coastline recently? Zhang Yi asked casually. Upon hearing this, Lu Dehai's tan face showed a hint of hesitation. Huh? What's wrong? Zhang Yi saw his hesitation and asked with a smile. Lu Dehai hurriedly said, Oh, Mr. Zhang, it's like this. Recently, 2 of our fishing boats went out to sea and haven't returned. Zhang Yi raised his eyebrows. Are they big ships? Lu Dehai shook his head. No, due to the insect disaster, we don't dare to go out to sea for large-scale fishing. So it's just a few small boats fishing for fish and shrimp in the coastal area to supply daily food. Zhang Yi took a deep breath. I understand. Going out to sea to fish at a time like this is always risky. Just carry on as usual. Lu Dehai nodded in agreement, then led Gao Tianwu and the others to the Chaoyu base. Zhang Yi and Yang Xinxin arrived at the place where the Bugmaster was being held. This guy isn't very strong. At most, he's only at the Delta level. Judging from his destructive power, he's probably around 6,000 to 7,000 points. But he has almost no personal combat ability. However, the guy standing behind him may already be at the Epsilon level. Zhang Yi said indifferently. The criteria for judgment were very simple. Since the other party dared to attack Tianhai City, they must have considerable strength. Otherwise, not to mention Zhang Yi, even the people around Zhang Yi would not be able to defeat them. But the other party was still wary, which meant that his strength had not yet reached the level where he could sweep everything away. If the other party's strength reached the level of Black Tortoise, they would have rushed to Tianhai City to wreak havoc. Looking at the Bugmaster who was staring at Yang Xinxin with a look of obsession, Zhang Yi rubbed his chin. Although we've caught this guy, how do we get the person behind the scenes to show himself? If we don't take care of that guy, he'll be a huge threat. A smile appeared on Yang Xinxin's lips. Brother, leave this problem to Xinxin. She looked at the Bugmaster with some disgust. After my power increased, my control over others became even stronger. I can maintain control over mutants of this level for 24 hours. We can use him to feed false information to the other side and make him move. Zhang Yi looked at Yang Xinxin curiously. For example, since the other side knows I'm here, it's impossible for them to make a move easily, right? He said helplessly, even if I pretend to leave Tianhai City, my ability is space, so no matter how far away I am, I can quickly return to Tianhai City. A sly smile appeared in Yang Xinxin's eyes. Since there's no way to leave a loophole for the other side in space, then let's lay the groundwork from within. Zhang Yi blinked. What do you mean? Yang Xinxin said, just say that Kira is 9 months pregnant and about to give birth. Zhang Yi, pfft. He widened his eyes. That'll work? Yang Xinxin looked at him calmly and said, just imagine, if your woman was giving birth at home right now, would you still have the heart to fight? The other party is a cunning guy. He definitely won't let this opportunity slip by. Zhang Yi nodded and thought carefully. Yang Xinxin's plan was indeed very good. You mean let him go back and tell the mastermind behind this? But will he believe it? A cold expression flashed across Yang Xinxin's face. It's fine if he dies trying. I'll let this useless man finish delivering the information, then kill him immediately. The mastermind might suspect the loyalty of his subordinates, but he would never imagine that his subordinates would risk their lives to pass on false information for the sake of his enemy. Zhang Yi agreed, that makes sense. Not to mention that person, even I would find it difficult to suspect something like that. Yang Xinxin whispered, but there's still one problem. If we lure that person out, will you be able to kill him, brother? This time, it was Zhang Yi's turn to smile confidently. As long as we are sufficiently prepared, not even that person will be able to enter Tianhai City. Even if Black Tortoise and Cardalus come, I will be able to kill them. Even the most powerful mutants are just humans who have become stronger, so they must have weaknesses. Zhang Yi never fought unprepared. With the right time, place, and people, even the most powerful opponent could be defeated. Yang Xinxin smiled and nodded, all right, let's do it. Zhang Yi pondered for a moment and said, half a month. We need that much time to prepare. Let him live for now and continue to create mutant cockroaches, pretending that nothing has happened. Half a month later, I'll have everything ready and wait for him to take the bait. A fierce light flashed in Zhang Yi's eyes. To touch his stronghold was to touch his most sensitive spot. That guy had to die. In the next half-month, there was no news from Tianhai City. The Bugmaster had been completely controlled, and Yang Xinxin ordered him to continue creating the cockroach army to affect the 3 major bases. When the power of Cupid's arrow was about to disappear, Zhou Qir injected him with a drug to put him into a deep sleep. As for Zhang Yi, he began his work. The first thing he had to do was finish digesting the origin of the lost soul and convert that power into his own. He had to adapt to his new power and learn to use it freely. The second thing was that one night, he used Space Shuffle to secretly arrive at Blizzard City. It was late at night, and the captain of the Night Raven squad, Muyen, was already asleep in her black pajamas. The usually cold and indifferent captain's room was decorated in pink. The room was filled with princess hammocks and various dolls. It seemed that this was the only way she could get a glimpse of the warmth she had long lost. After the end of the world, she had lost all her family, and her friends had come and gone during her wanderings. Now, she was accustomed to the ugliness of human nature and had long since closed her heart, no longer trusting anyone. Suddenly, an invisible dimensional gate opened in front of her bed. Crack! It was a very light sound, the sound of shoes stepping on the wooden floor. Muyan's eyes opened in an instant, her eyes were a lifeless ice blue. She was blind and originally couldn't see anything. However, this awakened her special supernatural ability to sense everything around her. It was because of this ability, along with her other ability, Shadow Assassin, that she became the captain of Zhu Zheng's Shadow Reconnaissance Unit, the Night Raven Squad. Tongue. Muyan turned over and lunged forward, her elbow aimed straight at Zhang Yi's face. The faint moonlight shone through the window and into the room, and she, wearing only a black lace nightgown, her white calves glowing brightly. "It's me," Zhang Yi said lightly. Muyan's body froze in midair, then quickly withdrew her attack, but because of this movement, she fell onto the bed. Zhang Yi didn't turn on the lights. At this time of night, all the lights in the neighborhood were out, so if he suddenly turned on the lights, it would be easy for someone to notice. He sat down on a chair with his arms crossed. Muyan picked up a black ribbon from the table and covered her eyes with it. "Captain Chaos? Just call me Zhang Yi. This isn't work." "Okay, codename Zhang." Zhang Yi took a deep breath. "You're happy to tease me, aren't you?" Muyan's mouth curved into a faint smile, as if she was a little smug. Zhang Yi rubbed his nose. Sure enough, women were all the same, very resentful. Muyan sat on the bed, not rushing to change her clothes. Perhaps it could be said that she couldn't change her clothes now. After all, she wasn't wearing anything under her nightgown. Zhang Yi said, "I'm sorry, it's my first time at your house, so I couldn't find the living room." "Don't worry, I didn't see anything." That was the truth. Muyan's voice was cold as ice. "Zhang Yi, famous throughout the world, how could you be a pervert? Just wave your hand, and countless women in Blizzard City will fight over you." But, she curled up her legs and hugged her knees, her gaze seemingly able to see through the black veil to Zhang Yi. "Visiting so late at night, what do you want?" Zhang Yi smiled. "An honest man doesn't speak in riddles. I want to ask you for a favor. Come with me to Tianhai City." Muyan frowned slightly. "Ask me for help? Do you really need my help?" She was completely confused. As an emergency reinforcement for the Jiangnan region, her strength was not very high, and she could only use her special abilities as the captain of the reconnaissance unit. With Zhang Yi's strength, would he really need her help? Zhang Yi said lightly, "Everyone is a screw, and no screw is useless, it's just that it hasn't been put in the right place yet. I need your abilities for this matter." Muyan remembered how Zhang Yi had rejected her request to follow him, and she couldn't help but raise her chin slightly. "That's not what you said back then." The smile on Zhang Yi's face grew even wider. "Are you being tsundere?" A hint of red appeared on Muyan's frosty face. "No," she said coldly. Zhang Yi thought to himself, if that weren't the case, you wouldn't be so eager to refute me. But he didn't say it out loud. Women are creatures who say one thing and mean another. Exposing them at a time like this would be foolish. "So, are you coming or not?" he asked simply and directly. Muyan thought for a moment and suddenly asked, "You only needed to go find Commander Zhu. He would have given the order, and I would have gone. Then why did you come looking for me in the middle of the night?" Zhang Yi looked at her. "I don't mind owing you a favor, but I don't want to owe Commander Zhu one." In fact, this was also a test for Muyan. The first time Muyan asked to follow Zhang Yi, he was tempted. But he couldn't guarantee Muyan's loyalty. So this time, Zhang Yi wanted to see if she was willing to break the rules of Blizzard City for him. Blizzard City was under military control. Without orders from headquarters, no one was allowed to leave without permission, especially the powerful mutants of the investigation team. Sure enough, Muyan fell into deep thought. She knew very well what Zhang Yi's purpose was. After a long time, she pursed her lips. If I leave with you, will you let me join your team? There had always been a fear in her heart. With Ice Soul implanted in her, sooner or later she would be absorbed by Zhiyu and become nourishment for her. Looking at the whole of Tianhai City, only Zhang Yi could protect her safety. Zhang Yi said lightly, "This alone is not enough to let you stay by my side. But it will increase your points in my heart. So go or not, it's up to you." Muyan pursed her lips, Zhang Yi's caution making her feel melancholic. But, Zhang Yi suddenly said, "Regardless of whether you can join my team or not, I will remember the favor you did for me. Then no one in the entire Jiangnan region will be able to touch you, not even Zhu Zheng." Muyan raised her head abruptly. This was what she wanted most. Without any hesitation, she nodded directly, "Okay, I'll go with you." A smile appeared on Zhang Yi's lips. Everything was under his control. "Then go change your clothes first." He walked out the door, leaving Muyan feeling a little disappointed. If she had the chance to gain Zhang Yi's trust, she didn't mind offering her body. But it was clear that Zhang Yi would not eat food from an unknown source. Before the end of the world, he often played battle royale games, and he had seen many men suffer losses in this regard. He couldn't get himself into trouble just because he was greedy. Who knew how many sweethearts in this world had turned to evil? Muyan changed into a full set of combat gear, then followed Zhang Yi. Only a few minutes later, they arrived in Tianhai City. It was late at night, and the shelter was brightly lit. No one was asleep, but instead waiting for something to happen. After Muyan arrived, Zhang Yi introduced her to everyone. Although everyone at home knew who the spirit guardian captain was, when they saw that she was a young, beautiful girl with a gentle temperament, they couldn't help but feel a little wary. Yang Xinxin glanced at her watch and said lightly, "According to the time, Kier, you should be in the delivery room working hard right now." As she spoke, she glanced at Zhou Kier. Zhou Kier was speechless, stamped her feet, and turned to walk into the room. Zhang Yi asked Muyan to sit down on the sofa in the living room, and Yang Xia poured her a cup of tea. "Next, please do this." It was late at night in the middle of winter, and it snowed almost every day in Tianhai City, and it was a very heavy snowstorm. The people at Chaoyu Base had already entered the underground shelter, closed the heavy doors, and fallen asleep in the relatively warm environment. However, deep in the sea, dark waves were surging. The ink-black sea water rose and fell continuously in the storm, as if something was pushing the waves. The waves grew higher and higher, crashing against the coastline of Tianhai City in layers upon layers. Beneath the vast ocean, a huge and terrifying shadow was rapidly moving toward Tianhai City. Boom, boom. From a distance, the waves looked like a black line, but as they gradually approached the coast, they slowly became terrifying. Finally, they turned into a towering wave dozens of meters high, pressing down on the coastline of Tianhai City like a tidal wave. The alarm at Chaoyu Base sounded, waking everyone up. Lu Dehai rolled over and got up, and his men reported, "Chief, a tsunami is coming." Lu Dehai was stunned. The coastal area within a radius of more than 10 kilometers had already been frozen, so how could a tsunami arrive so easily? He shouted, "Quick, everyone gather immediately." The Chaoyu Base was located underground in the harbor and had excellent waterproofing. Barring any accidents, it would not be affected by the tsunami. But at a time like this, no one would risk their lives. Lu Dehai himself also reported the situation here to Zhang Yi as soon as possible. Zhang Yi sat on the sofa, drinking coffee to stay awake. After hearing Lu Dehai's report, he looked out the window. On the distant coastline, thunder rolled, and lightning struck like sharp swords, continuously falling down. The mountains have no ridges, the sky and earth are joined, winter thunder rumbles, summer rain and snow. It's winter now, how can there be thunder? Zhang Yi took a sip of hot coffee, his eyes flashing with caution. He's coming. The waves crashed down on Tianhai City like walls, and in the depths of the ocean, some terrifying entity was stirring the waters, causing this terrifying tsunami. The scale of the tsunami was so great that it could even submerge half of Tianhai City. The entire coastline of Tianhai City would be destroyed. Within the huge wall of waves, terrifying monsters opened their blood-red eyes, their shadows looming. Their 6 eyes were like 6 huge searchlights, and they stood hundreds of meters tall, like titanic beasts that were about to destroy the world, sending chills down the spine. Zhang Yi, today I will destroy everything you hold dear. Even if I can't kill you, you won't be able to save everyone around you, will you? All of this is the consequence you deserve for turning me into this. The giant beast in the sea let out a low roar. Boom! The tsunami rushed ashore and instantly submerged everything on the shore. The Chaoyu base urgently closed all the doors. Although it was a carefully constructed doomsday shelter, it could withstand a huge tsunami. However, under the impact of the huge waves, the shelter was shaking violently, giving people a terrifying feeling that it could collapse at any moment. Lu Dehai was already covered in sweat. Even as a mutant, he was no different from an ordinary person and was completely powerless against such force. He could only pray that Zhang Yi would be able to resolve this crisis. Roar! A huge, ferocious, and terrifying black monster suddenly burst out of the tsunami and let out a roar to the sky. Hundreds of bolts of lightning split the sky, ruthlessly destroying every building in Tianhai City that was visible to the naked eye. The tallest pearl tower was struck by a bolt of lightning, immediately splitting at the neck, and the pearl on top fell with a loud bang. The monster's bloody eyes looked into the distance, at the shelter by the Heron River, which was its ultimate goal. Zhang Yi! The monster roared, its terrifying pressure rushing in that direction, causing the sea water to roll back and attack that direction without deviation. Behind the monster, more than a dozen warships suddenly appeared, following in its wake. Thousands of pirates crowded onto the ships, brandishing their weapons in the blizzard and letting out excited cries. At the end of the waves, a figure suddenly appeared out of thin air. Zhang Yi's gaze was calm as he hovered in midair. Compared to the waves dozens of meters high in front of him, his figure was so small. But in the face of the terrifying waves, he simply raised his hand, and thousands of huge dimensional gates directly blocked the waves. Crash! An invisible door completely sucked the seawater in, not giving them a chance to rush towards Heron River. Inside the shelter, the frog felt the terrifying power of heaven and stared wide-eyed at the huge monster revealing itself in the distance. Croak! He took out his vertical flute and began to play a melody amid the wind and thunder, and Totoro also took out his flute and joined him. The sound of the wind, thunder, and musical instruments intertwined into a stirring symphony. Zhou Qi stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling window and said calmly, "Everyone, let's protect our home today." Behind her, everyone in the shelter stood with serious expressions on their faces, then nodded vigorously. They had been prepared for this day, but when they saw the terrifying tsunami that looked like a doomsday disaster, everyone's hearts couldn't help but be stirred. Soon, everyone arrived at their posts and began preparations. Uncle Yu and Lu Karen arrived at a control room on the second floor and began preparing the defensive weapons that Lu Karen had spent a lot of time preparing. Above the sky, under the night, Zhang Yi gazed into the distance at the monsters in the dark sea. His voice was transmitted through the loudspeaker of his combat suit. "Long time no see, Sky Dragon King. I didn't expect you to still be alive." The monster that appeared here was none other than the Sky Dragon King, who had been tricked by Zhang Yi on Star Island and nearly killed by Soul Reaper. Zhang Yi had thought he was dead. As a pirate leader, he had been overconfident and tried to compete with several major forces for the Source of God. This could not be called brave. From Zhang Yi's point of view, it was nothing more than suicide. Later, Star Island underwent several major battles with Epsilon, and then some creatures from the abyss appeared. Zhang Yi thought that no life could possibly survive on the island at that time. Not to mention that the Sky Dragon King had been seriously injured by Soul Reaper. But unexpectedly, he did not die and had returned to seek revenge on Zhang Yi. Moreover, the Sky Dragon King was now much more powerful than before, even terrifying. Judging from his ability to trigger a tsunami, the Sky Dragon King had now advanced to the realm of Epsilon. How did he do it? Could it be that he found the source of God in the underground of Star Island that I didn't discover? When did Epsilon start to become so powerful? Zhang Yi wondered in his heart. The Sky Dragon King had completely changed in appearance. He was even bigger than before and no longer in the form of a diamond armor dragon. Instead, he had turned into a strange giant dragon with 3 heads that emitted black smoke from all over his body. Zhang Yi was very familiar with that aura. It was almost identical to the black armored monster that had appeared in the abyss. When the Sky Dragon King saw Zhang Yi, the eyes of his 3 heads emitted an even more blood-red glow. Zhang Yi! He roared, his voice filled with hatred. It was impossible to imagine how much hatred one person could hold in their heart to be so enraged. Zhang Yi could understand this. After all, the entire Sky Dragon pirates had been destroyed by him. He had killed Kanuta and Nerit, and had almost killed the Sky Dragon King on Star Island. This was a hatred that could not be reconciled. Sky Dragon King. You are now a mutant in the realm of Epsilon. You can get back everything you lost. You can rebuild the Sky Dragon pirates and restore your former glory, even greater than before. Why come here to fight me to the death? Let's talk, okay? Zhang Yi did not want to fight to the death with an Epsilon. Although he had already assessed the Sky Dragon King's strength and was well prepared, he wanted to avoid anything dangerous. But the Sky Dragon King was not grateful in the slightest. Shut up. You ruined me completely. You made me what I am now, there's no going back, nothing will ever be the same. I came back here for one reason, to drag you down to hell with me. Zhang Yi frowned. He didn't understand what the Sky Dragon King meant. Ruined? Wasn't becoming Epsilon a good thing for the Sky Dragon King? Why couldn't he hear a hint of happiness in his tone, but instead heard despair and destruction? It seemed that there must be some important secret behind the Sky Dragon King's survival on Star Island. But for now, he had to deal with him first before he could slowly consider those questions. The Sky Dragon King's 3 heads roared wildly, his voice filled with grief and pain. No one knew what he had gone through. What could have caused him to hate Zhang Yi so much that he was even willing to fight him to the death? The Sky Dragon King's first head suddenly shot a shockwave towards the ground. Earthquake! The ground around him suddenly shattered, and rocks shot up into the sky like sharp spikes, turning into a huge wave of rocks that rushed towards Zhang Yi and the shelter behind him. With one strike, the ground around the Sky Dragon King collapsed and sank several kilometers, and the offensive continued to spread around him. If the shelter was hit, the layer of earth and rocks underground would collapse, and even with the strongest defenses, it would be buried by the earth and rocks. Unfortunately, Zhang Yi's dimensional gate couldn't defend against this move. Zhang Yi's gaze turned cold. Since negotiations had failed, it was time to fight. He took out the sword in his right hand, and the dark power of the void wrapped around it, turning it into a long, narrow sword. My ability is called Absolute Defense. The Epsilon realm is known for being able to destroy a city with a single person. And I can defend a city by myself. With me here, no one can destroy Tianhai City. Zhang Yi swung his sword horizontally, and a black blade of light cut from east to west across Tianhai City, creating a huge crack more than 10 kilometers long. Boom! The earth split open, dividing into 2 halves and revealing a rift nearly 1,000 meters deep. The Sky Dragon King's earthquake came to an abrupt halt here, and a large amount of earth and rocks rolled into the rift, unable to spread forward another step. At this moment, the Sky Dragon King's second head also launched an attack. Sea Tide. A dragon's roar resounded throughout the heavens and earth, crushing the ice layer near the coast behind him. The endless tide that had reached Tianhai City surged like boiling water, and the sea water rose to a height of hundreds of meters in an instant, even approaching the height of the Sky Dragon King's body. The huge wall of water spread out for tens of miles, as if it were about to engulf the entire city of Tianhai. Destroy. Boom. A large amount of seawater surged forward, rushing towards Zhang Yi's refuge. Zhang Yi spread his arms. Everything under heaven. 3,000 realms. One after another, invisible dimensional gates opened in West Mountain. At that time, the two realms were separated, and he could only protect himself. But today, he could protect an entire city. After reaching the Epsilon realm, his dimensional space had expanded and could absorb vast amounts of seawater. After the seawater rushed into the dimensional space, it showed no signs of filling up and continued to sink into it. Physical attacks are meaningless to me, Zhang Yi said indifferently. The Sky Dragon King let out a hey, and a flash of cunning and malice flashed in his eyes. This move is not that simple. Behind the waves, more than a dozen warships and thousands of pirates charged into Tianhai City, shouting and killing. The main cannons of the warships were aimed at the shelter and began to bombard it, the roar shaking the heavens. At this moment, Zhang Yi had to block the Sky Dragon King. Even if he spent every ounce of his energy dealing with the dozen or so scattered warships, it would leave an opening for the Sky Dragon King to attack him. I told you, I can't kill you, but I can destroy everything you have. The Sky Dragon King roared angrily. You're thinking too simple. Tianhai City isn't full of useless people besides me, Zhang Yi said indifferently. Inside the shelter, a beast roared, shaking the heavens. A huge black beast flapped its wings and rose into the air. It grew with the wind and quickly turned into a giant several dozen meters tall, covered in sharp black hair as sharp as steel needles. Flower flapped its wings and rose into the air, opening its mouth and shooting out a breath of atomic energy, wiping out hundreds of pirates on one of the warships. It flapped its wings and moved as fast as a shadow, arriving between the other two warships. Then Flower opened its huge mouth, and a huge black hole formed in front of it. The powerful suction directly dragged both warships over. Ow! The pirates' attacks had no effect on Flower. In terms of defense, Flower's defensive ability was unmatched in the entire Tianhai City. The two warships and hundreds of pirates were directly swallowed by Flower. Then, the power of flesh and blood replenished its supernatural abilities. This was Flower's ability, Gluttony, which allowed it to turn the enemies it devoured into its own supernatural abilities. From this perspective, as long as it could continue to kill enemies, it would never feel tired. This was the power of a beast. The Sky Dragon King's three heads gritted their teeth and spat out scorching waves of air, dragon saliva flowing from the corners of their mouths. He didn't expect Zhang Yi to have such a backup plan. So what? Even if I die today, I'll drag you down to hell with me. I'll burn with you. The three-headed dragon roared and charged at Zhang Yi. The third head roared, and the sky was filled with the sound of thunder, creating a terrifying scene. In the sky, bolts of lightning turned into spherical lightning balls and rained down on Zhang Yi, each carrying incredible power. The Sky Dragon King himself charged forward with terrifying power that could destroy everything. The Sky Dragon King was a heroic figure with tremendous potential. He was extremely powerful in both close combat and long-range combat. Unfortunately, he did not belong to any major faction and did not have the same luck as Zhang Yi. Otherwise, his achievements might not have been much worse than Zhang Yi's. But that's life, luck is also part of strength. Everything follows the trail. Everything under heaven. Zhang Yi didn't dare to be the slightest bit arrogant in the face of the Sky Dragon King. Although his defense was extremely powerful, at this moment, he couldn't be as carefree as before. Because the Sky Dragon King had really come to fight him to the death. Moreover, this guy was completely ruthless. If he couldn't kill Zhang Yi, he would destroy the homeland behind him. The dimensional gate had to withstand the huge tsunami on one side and the spherical lightning bolts falling from the sky on the other. In front of it, the three-headed dragon charged straight at it. The space around Zhang Yi's right eye began to twist, and facing the three-headed dragon directly in front of him, he unleashed his strongest short-range killing move, Divine Destruction. In the twisted space, everything was like a crumpled rag, and even the Sky Dragon King's indestructible body suffered tremendous resistance and was violently thrown thousands of meters away. Finally, with a plop, it fell into the sea. All of this was a bit too much for Zhang Yi to handle. Zhang Yi couldn't help but feel a little scared. If he hadn't captured the Bugmaster, obtained certain information from him, and set up today's trap, then Zhang Yi couldn't even imagine what the consequences of the Sky Dragon King's attack would have been. But fortunately, he had prepared thoroughly. Inside the shelter, Lu Karen and Uncle Yu operated the machine together and, following Zhang Yi's instructions, they seized this opportunity. Ding! Lu Karen took a deep breath and pressed the button in her hand. On the second floor of the shelter, the top of a room suddenly opened on both sides, and a silver cannon barrel more than 10 meters long protruded from inside. It aimed at the Sky Dragon King in midair, suddenly let out a deafening roar, and then suddenly spurted out a white light that pierced the sky. Hit by Zhang Yi's divine destruction, the Sky Dragon King fell into the ocean and was caught off guard by the powerful laser beam. Even his steel-like body suffered serious damage. Lu Karen saw this scene and her eyes lit up with excitement. This was the latest weapon technology Zhang Yi had obtained from Blizzard City. It was originally used as a city defense cannon and possessed incomparable power. Now, after her modification, it had become one of the strongest defensive fortifications of the shelter. She called it the Tianhai City Cannon. And the shelter naturally became Tianhai Fortress. As Zhang Yi's strength grew, the level of opponents he had to face also increased. Therefore, it was necessary to upgrade the shelter's defense level. The Sky Dragon King's huge and terrifying steel-like body rolled in the waves, then quickly rose into the air, and 3 huge heads roared angrily. Although this attack did not cause him much damage, if Zhang Yi used it in combination with another attack, it would still be a problem. Not to mention that Zhang Yi also had a big cat named Flower with an ability index of 9,800. If these creatures were to attack when he and Zhang Yi were fighting for their lives and had exhausted all their strength, they would definitely pose a huge threat to him. He had come to fight Zhang Yi to the death, not to die. The Sky Dragon King's eyes suddenly flickered, and he suddenly roared at Zhang Yi, "Zhang Yi, if you're so good, come and fight me one-on-one. If you don't come, I'll keep harassing Tianhai City until you can't leave it for the rest of your life." With that, he leaped into the air and flew toward the endless ocean. The corners of Zhang Yi's mouth curled slightly. "Fine, you really think I'm no match for you?" Leaving Tianhai City was also a good thing for Zhang Yi. At least he would be less restricted. His figure flashed in the air, and after a few jerks, he appeared above the sea. It was a night of blizzards, with strong winds and rough seas. Endless waves roared and rose skyward, and thunder rumbled in the sky. The Sky Dragon King's huge dark body hovered in the air, its 3 heads filled with anger, staring fiercely at Zhang Yi. Suddenly, the 3 heads opened their blood-red mouths at the same time. 3 different colored balls of light gathered in its mouth and in an instant turned into 3 terrifying roars of energy, rushing straight towards Zhang Yi. Earthquake. Tidal wave. Thunderstorm. Zhang Yi spread his arms, and countless doors to other dimensions opened up around him. Everything under heaven. Boom. 3 terrifying energy waves shot into Zhang Yi's dimensional space. The fierce and unparalleled power was so strong that it couldn't be repelled in such a short time and could only be forcibly absorbed. However, the tidal absolute defense was no joke. Although the Sky Dragon King had been promoted to Epsilon, his killing power was far from enough to break through Zhang Yi's defense. Therefore, he couldn't break Zhang Yi's defense. The 3 energy waves were the strongest attacks he could use at the moment. A moment later, this force was completely swallowed up by the dimensional space. However, this force was still far from Zhang Yi's limit. At this moment, Zhang Yi reached out and slowly pulled out a 2-meter-long dark silver sniper rifle from the void. After Lu Karen's modifications, his Thunderstrike and White Eagle were already able to withstand his current power. The entire gun body was changed to Edelman metal, and the bullets were replaced with a new type of Holy Silver bullet. Hot weapons had not left the battlefield in the battles between high-level mutants. The power of technology was also playing its proper role at a higher level. A gun? The moment the Sky Dragon King saw Zhang Yi pull out the large gun, a look of confusion and bewilderment appeared in his eyes. At their current level, no bullet was fast enough to catch up with his flying speed. However, he did not let his guard down, because he knew that Zhang Yi was definitely not the type of person to do something stupid. Zhang Yi raised the sniper rifle in his hand and said lightly, "Next, it's hunting time." He held Thunderstrike in his arms and didn't even need to raise it to aim, as if he were holding a huge machine gun in his hands. A black light flashed from the position of Zhang Yi's arm on the body of Thunderstrike and instantly spread to the entire gun. Zhang Yi didn't even look ahead, he just casually pulled the trigger. In the next moment, a silver light pierced through space and arrived in front of the Sky Dragon King at an unimaginable speed. The Sky Dragon King's pupils suddenly contracted. This speed was far beyond anything he could comprehend with any firearm. Uncertain of the power of the shot, he didn't dare to take it head-on. His huge body shook violently in the air, causing a deafening sonic boom. He was trying to dodge the shot. In the blink of an eye, his body dodged the trajectory of the shot, but something unexpected happened. His huge body suddenly felt a sharp pain. When the Sky Dragon King looked down, he was shocked to find a hole the size of a bucket in his body, with blood flowing out of it. How is this possible? The Sky Dragon King's eyes widened, unable to believe what he was seeing. He had clearly dodged the bullet, so why was he still hit? Zhang Yi calmly pulled the trigger again. "This is my new skill. I call it Destined Reincarnation." Another shot was fired, and the white laser locked onto the Sky Dragon King like the Grim Reaper. He tried to dodge again, but no matter what he did, he couldn't escape Zhang Yi's attack and was shot again. The Sky Dragon King was completely enraged. He stirred up an endless tsunami and swept toward Zhang Yi. Zhang Yi stood motionless in midair. No matter how fierce the waves were, they all entered Zhang Yi's dimensional space and were then expelled by Zhang Yi from another direction and released back into the sea. He continued to pull the trigger. It was an extremely despicable display, because Zhang Yi did not aim at the Sky Dragon King at all, and the bullets seemed to have eyes, tracking the Sky Dragon King. No matter how fast the Sky Dragon King was, he would be caught by this bullet. Bang! 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 More than a dozen bullet holes quickly appeared on the Sky Dragon King's huge body. Although these injuries were not fatal to his huge body, Zhang Yi had added a deadly poison to the bullets. These bullets were specially prepared for hunting powerful enemies. When the bullet head hit a hard enough object, the inner layer would automatically crack open, and the poison inside would immediately spill out and mix with the target's blood. Even ants can kill an elephant if there are enough of them, so if there were enough of these bullets, they would have a significant effect on the Sky Dragon King. The Sky Dragon King suffered a heavy loss at the hands of Zhang Yi. At this moment, he understood that he had completely fallen into a disadvantageous position. Zhang Yi had long been prepared for his attack. Now, Zhang Yi had set up a trap in Tianhai City and was just waiting for him to attack. Fighting in Tianhai City, he had to face the Tianhai City cannon and the big cat's fierce attacks. But fighting at sea, he had no advantage, and instead, he would leave Zhang Yi with no worries. The Sky Dragon King roared, "Zhang Yi! Don't you even care about your wife giving birth?" Zhang Yi replaced his magazine with a new one and said calmly, "At a time like this, you still believe such nonsense? You deserve to be in this mess. Your level of knowledge matches your current situation." Although the Sky Dragon King had already anticipated this, he was unwilling to admit it. This information had been obtained at the cost of his men's lives. Who would suspect that his own men would risk their lives to pass false information to the enemy? However, Zhang Yi's words forced him to accept reality. He had been tricked by Zhang Yi. Once again, he had been tricked by Zhang Yi. Zhang Yi! The Sky Dragon King roared in anger, but all that greeted him were Zhang Yi's merciless bullets. The Sky Dragon King was not willing to accept defeat like this. He triggered a tsunami and summoned endless spherical lightning bolts from the sky, launching a fierce attack on Zhang Yi. Zhang Yi didn't dodge or evade. he used the simplest tactic, which was to use his powerful defense to wear down the Sky Dragon King. The Sky Dragon King's attacks had no effect on him. Although Zhang Yi's bullets weren't very powerful, they were stable. As long as he kept it up, the Sky Dragon King would eventually be worn down. However, the Sky Dragon King was no fool. After fighting Zhang Yi many times, he finally realized the strange nature of Zhang Yi's bullets. The reason his bullets could change trajectory in midair was because every time they were fired, they would suddenly disappear in midair and then shoot out from another direction. Destined reincarnation was a new skill that Zhang Yi had researched after obtaining his new weapon. It was not really a new skill, but rather a new way of using his two abilities, time in his left eye and space in his right eye, to obtain a new ability. Everything follows the trail can predict the opponent's trajectory within 2 seconds. However, once the bullet leaves the barrel, it cannot change direction, so the opponent can still dodge and advance. Therefore, Zhang Yi combined the abilities of Everything Follows the Trail and his Dimensional Gate. When the bullet is fired, it is aimed at the opponent's location. However, halfway through the bullet's flight, at the limit of the Dimensional Gate's 3 km range, a pair of Dimensional Gates are added. After passing through the Dimensional Gates, the bullet changes direction, effectively changing its trajectory to aim at the opponent's predicted landing point. Since both happen at the same time, the bullet's acceleration is already complete. Considering the instinctive reaction of humans, they would not think that a bullet could turn in midair. Therefore, his opponent had no time to react. This is called a gunfighting technique. When the Sky Dragon King realized this, he was unable to respond in time. This was because Zhang Yi had predicted his prediction. However, with his brain, it was impossible for him to predict that Zhang Yi had predicted his prediction at that moment. It sounds a bit confusing, but the actual situation was even more complicated. Even if you understand something, you don't know how to respond. Zhang Yi! He shouted Zhang Yi's name in anger, and the 3 heads once again fired high-energy particle beams. But he overestimated his own strength. Even Black Tortoise's atomic breath and Cardalus's super primordial water couldn't break through Zhang Yi's dimensional space, let alone the current Sky Dragon King. In order to prevent his power from affecting Tianhai City behind him, Zhang Yi chose to take all of the Sky Dragon King's power. However, after this colossal power entered the dimensional space, it couldn't even cause a ripple. Zhang Yi kept changing bullets and attacking the Sky Dragon King. This battle seemed dull and uneventful. At this moment, Zhang Yi was like a ruthless tower defense machine, spending time grinding down a boss-level monster. However, only Zhang Yi and his family in the sanctuary knew how dangerous this battle was. If they hadn't captured the Bugmaster and forced him to reveal the Sky Dragon King's whereabouts, they wouldn't have been able to prepare in advance. Then today, even if Zhang Yi would have been fine, the sanctuary would have faced the risk of being destroyed. The Sky Dragon King roared in pain. I thought that after I was promoted to Epsilon, I would be strong enough to at least cause you great pain, even if I couldn't kill you, you despicable guy. But why did I still fail? Zhang Yi, just you wait, this isn't over, it won't end. I'll be in your nightmares, staring at you. The Sky Dragon King had realized that his power was no match for Zhang Yi's defenses. But as a Dragon King skilled in both offense and defense, Zhang Yi couldn't do anything to him in a short period of time. Thunderstrike combined with the Holy Silver Bullet could indeed break through his defense, but it couldn't kill him. Even if the Sky Dragon King wanted to fight Zhang Yi to the death, Zhang Yi's life was too tough, he couldn't fight him. His 3 huge heads glared at Zhang Yi, then he suddenly dove into the sea.